I'm taking a really close look at Obsidian, and in my last video, I was talking about how to categorize them as, whether they're a AAA studio or a AA studio and all that. But I think I can put them in a category where their budget is mid-range compared to other, game development firms. In looking very carefully now at some of their titles, I'm starting to see what they're talking about here. So Outer Worlds 2019. 2022, they had Pentiment and Grounded. And there was an article here that's written Obsidian CEO reveals it's just half the size of many AAA studios, even as it prepares to launch its fourth game in 5 years. This kind of output, in my opinion, for a studio like this really does make a lot of sense. I strongly believe that PlayStation would probably have had studios like this, but it did have this maybe necessity for AAA games, necessity for exclusives that are bangers and all that stuff. And it missed out on the possibility of getting some sustainability for its smaller studios. This person on PC Gamer writes, who wrote this? This is Ted Lickfield, I think. It says, as reported by Windows Central, Obsidian CEO Fergus Yorqua revealed the extent of the studio's expansion since it was acquired by Microsoft in a recent interview with IGN. Since 2018, Obsidian has grown to nearly 300 employees, which is still pretty lean in the AAA space. And then, quotes, when we came on with Xbox Game Studios and Xbox, we were about 170 to 180 people, Yorqua told IGN. And through the course of the last 5 or 6 years, we've not only grown the studio to about 285 people, but we also have a lot of really good co-dev partners with Heavy Iron and Beamdog. Okay, this is this is starting to seem a little bit more realistic. For comparison, here's how large other major studios are. Bungie, a shadow of itself, basically, but still Bungie. 850, CD Projekt Red 615, Larian 470. Whoo, Larian's big. Bethesda Game Studios 450 plus, Insomniac 450. YouTube video cited by Wikipedia has been removed. Naughty Dog 400, Valve 336, Santa Monica 250. They're bigger than Santa Monica. BioWare fewer than 100 and down from over 200. And what is this? ZA/UM70. Looking at those numbers, I'd put Obsidian at the lighter end of mid-size, a welterweight studio. I would do the same too. That's something that makes it makes its incredible productivity in recent years all the more surprising. Now, I hope they don't go get bloated more than they need to. As game budgets increase and the 5-year plus year development cycles become the norm, Obsidian has released 3 games since 2020, Grounded, Pentiment, and now Avowed, with a fourth, The Outer Worlds, due by the end of the year. The Outer Worlds 2. We're not talking Valve levels of exerting more industry influence with more than 10,000 conglomerates like Ubisoft or EA, but Obsidian is still a studio punching above its weight. Clearly, there's something to be said for the developers' 100-year plan. Assume each game will be a mild success and not a sales record breaker, and allocate time, money, and staff accordingly. Interesting. That's one way to do it. Obsidian games don't push the envelope in terms of graphics or simulation tech, but instead impress through design, writing, and art direction. I hope they can keep that up. In a recent Bloomberg interview, Avowed lead Carrie Patel quoted the team as consistent at 80 people in 2021, or about a third of the studio. The sober, restrained sense of scope Obsidian's opted for in recent years stands in contrast with its wildly ambitious early games like Knights of the Old Republic 2 or New Vegas, which attempted to deliver on visionary promises in plus or minus 1-year development cycles. Then it was different, man. They were amazing games, but they also wound up screaming across the finish line on fire and with their wheels falling off. And the studios underwent layoffs, with its doors almost closing for good in the early 2010s. Obsidian's strategy is also an outlier in the games industry right now, with larger teams requiring more money and time to make games that each need to be a smash hit under threat of mass layoffs. Now, let's not forget about Sega and the folk that are doing the Yakuza games, okay? I mean, I know we are going to sing these praises, but there are other studios that do a very, very good job, if you get what I mean. And this is also something that needs to be taken a very close look at when you consider how the industry is right now. And Sega really does have teams that are in that category. And this is what I think it needs to look like. The 1-year and 2-year development cycle is not dead. It needs to be the norm, especially if a studio is, quite adept at what it is that they do, and they've already developed a lot of systems ahead of time. Another thing too is, let me keep reading. It says, why not necessarily having a vision or promise to justify such investments in the first place? I love sumptuous AAA excess as much as the next guy, but not everybody's going to make a Cyberpunk 2077 or a Baldur's Gate 3. Even that Baldur's Gate 3 about broke them. Cyberpunk 2077 about broke them. You remember the PlayStation 4 version? Uh-huh. You remember the Series S version? Uh-huh. And Obsidian has proven that the games resulting from more disciplined development practices won't be an inferior product or a downgrade where it counts. Pentiment and Avowed are among my favorite games in recent years. Sorry, Grounded, not a survival guy, but Fraser really liked you, and I've certainly enjoyed them more than most of the mega budget fare on offer. So this brings into the conversation that this is a very, very viable path forward. Xbox has been able to nail this down with this studio of theirs. They also have some other studios who are in the AAA space that have a similar output. For instance, the developers that do Forza Horizon games, this is another really interesting piece. Now, again, it still takes a while for their games to actually come out at the end of the day, if you think about it. So, this is something you got to basically balance. Forza Horizon 5 is already 4 years old by now, so they should be working on the other. But again, this is a game that requires support whenever it's launched because it's a service game in a sense. But the very best thing that I want to go ahead and point out here is small studios with big outputs is something that needs to be supported. And Xbox has found a way forward to support these small studios with, realistic ideas, not grandiose ideas like, we're going to do all this. No. They're going to make a game that is within their capability. And Xbox already has a pathway for these games to all go make money. If they're launching on PlayStation, they're launching on Xbox, they're launching on PC. If they're selling on PC, they're selling on Xbox. If they're not selling enough there, they're moving them to PlayStation. This is basically the business pattern that you're going to continue to see. If PlayStation doesn't want to, put money on, if PlayStation wants to leave money on the table, that's their prerogative. However, there's a difference in the sense that their studios that they're looking at are either really big behemoths, and failures will basically lead directly to closures, or at the end of the day, it will lead to staff reductions. And if they're not going to put their games on Xbox, which I don't think that they're really interested in doing, which it doesn't really matter, those studios are going to go away. Those games are basically going to become, games that they remaster for extra money so that they can basically try to recoup their, their investment. It's a very different set of tactics. But again, you're seeing Days Gone remaster show up out of nowhere. What is that game even doing with the remaster? Well, they refuse to greenlight the sequel because they don't want to take a risk for a game that may not sell. And at the end of the day, they still want to go ahead for this time frame, and make money off of the existing game, when they could literally just, in my opinion, come up with smaller projects that would probably get the job done. They decided that they were going to go all in on live service. And keep in mind, they're still going in on live service games, guys. They're not changing anything, in this particular instance. Anyways, talk to me in the comment section. What do you think about this approach in terms of developing your games? I think it's one that makes sense. It's smart. It's realistic, and it will bring that long-term churn that comes in from games like these, where, they don't go make all this money, but little by little, they'll be bringing their money in, and the studio will be able to stay open and make other games. And then they just continue to, basically increase their output like the Yakuza games under Sega are doing. Thanks for watching. Peace out.